Good morning, fellow grounded travelers. It's Eliz and Derek, and hope you guys are all having a wonderful Sunday. We are. Derek's just finishing up posting something on Instagram, which is why he's not looking at you. But he's here. So, I hope everybody's doing well. We're going to give a little bit of time for you all to say hi in the chat. Let us know who's on. Drink my tea. Let us know where you guys are from. And if you're drinking tea or coffee, because right now we're a house divided. I got some tea and Derek has coffee. Hey, Alan A. Good to see you too. Thanks for joining. And then let's see here. Sorry, we're just getting organized on the chat. And today, just so everybody knows, we are planning to do a little bit of a themed live stream for a certain amount of time, talking about booking hotel accommodations. So we want to talk about specifically our experiences with booking hotels, what different hotel chains, the pros and cons of becoming loyal to those chains might be. We also want to talk about Airbnbs, our experience with Airbnbs, how to decide between booking a hotel or Airbnb. We can also talk about our experience with hostels, if anybody is interested with that as well. I'm not sure what the crowd kind of leans towards. And then also too, I think we can just talk about our experience most recently booking hotels last minute. And because that kind of can differ in how you might approach your booking versus if you're planning out further in advance.
Yeah. So real quick, a couple people have kind of joined on. So Alan A., good to see you. Gallivanting Gals, welcome. Hopefully Indianapolis is doing well. Yeah. Malcolm Hogan, morning from New Zealand. It's 4 a.m. on Sunday. Holy cow.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you for
Good
joining.
Morning. Thanks
Good
so
morning.
much. I know that we've been talking back and forth a little bit, Malcolm, and so I'm so pleased to have you on finally. This is really great to have you join. I hope you got some good sleep already, though.
I don't know if you're coming off of a bender or what this is, but welcome.
Or
welcome.
maybe just woke up early to say hi. So.
Germany travel personal guide Darian, welcome.
Yes,
howdy.
Darian,
Mark Finley, thank you for joining. How you doing, sir?
Hi, Mark, and hi Terry too if you're there. And hey Rachel, hope Salt Lake is a really nice day. Clearly we're having really nice weather here in Chicago today. You can kind of see it's very sunny. And Derek already went for a walk this morning.
Mm-hmm. It's only going to actually get cooler throughout the day, so it was kind of already at the high. So I was like, well, I'm going to go for a walk before we do this. So.
Yeah. And hey Katie Smith, great to see you too. Thanks for joining us again. Always a pleasure to have you on. So we have a really great crowd. I don't know if you all heard when I was first talking, we wanted to talk a little bit about hotels, but also answer anybody's just travel questions and have some great camaraderie going about the travel space, especially because I feel like, people are just starting to really think about what the summer might look like in hopes that things are going to open up. We know that everybody has to be really cautious and, flexible, of course, but just having that hope that we can all do some sort of adventuring this summer is going to keep our spirits high.
Yep. So, the way we're thinking about it is accommodations into a few big buckets, kind of like super chain hotels like the Hyatts and Hiltons and SPGs, Marriotts, etc. And then there's the smaller, more boutique hotels or small chains. And then you have the VRBO, Airbnb type accommodations. And then lastly, we can talk a little bit about hostels and things like that. So.
And Malcolm, yes, I know you guys are going into winter over there, so you're ready to probably buckle down a little bit versus we're ready to spring out up here in the northern hemisphere. So, one thing too, since I know that you're up in the wee hours trying to help us out and say hello. What Derek and I have never done is go to New Zealand. So if there's any sort of hotel tips that you think are specific to New Zealand, whether that's the type of popular hotel chains in New Zealand or just how to book a good hotel there, we're all ears. Because
Or if there's cool, interesting types of places that you can stay at. For instance, in South America, you can stay at like estancias and stuff like that. In Argentina, where you actually go out and you stay on like kind of like a ranch and things like that. So if there's anything like that in New Zealand that's cool, interesting, and different, we'd love to hear about it since we've never been, but we want to go.
Yeah,
So.
we certainly do. Good morning, Darlene. Thanks for joining.
That's my mama.
Yeah, we have a great crew here today. Okay. Malcolm's saying the Accord chain would be the biggest.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Cool. Let's check that out.
Yeah, I think.
We've stayed at
Isn't that
Accords
the
before.
Aloft hotels?
No, that's SPG.
Oh, that's SPG. Sorry. Yeah, we have stayed at Accords. I can't quite remember which ones. Rachel's saying that in Morocco you can stay in riads, which Derek and I were looking into Morocco very actively as a 2020 destination for the coronavirus epidemic. And I think we were super excited to stay in a riad because Derek had gone to Morocco once before, but he did not stay in one. And we had heard so many great things about the riads and like the courtyards and that are kind of like in the center of the riad is basically like a very traditional structure in Morocco, a house, if you will, with a big courtyard in the middle, and there's a lot of great accommodation, whether it's kind of like an Airbnb or hotel, might be structured that way. No, those are cool. And in Morocco, when you walk around, I went there back in college, so it's been a little while, 11 years actually, but when I was there, they were kind of mentioning to us as the tour guides that you look at these houses and you just basically see like walls, and you don't see like, they don't believe in necessarily curb appeal in Morocco, and instead it's about once you enter the property, then you see the beauty that's inside. The way it was kind of explained to us by the tour guide was that it's, partially that, it's a modesty thing from the outside. You're not trying to like be glitzy, and also you don't want to like kind of shout your wealth to the world as much. You don't want to be a target for like thieves and things like that. So pretty interesting, and we look forward to hopefully going and experiencing that. That'd be cool. Yeah, definitely. And then Malcolm's also adding that in New Zealand, motels here are best with kitchens. That's something that we are going to actually speak about in depth when it came to hotels versus Airbnbs. It's interesting that you say motels with kitchens. We don't have that as much in the U.S., I would say.
You have like extended stay type places that would have like a living room and a kitchen and stuff,
and there are certain budget hotel chains that cater a little bit more towards families that perhaps might have like refrigerator and microwave inside of the room, just the basics, so that way a family could have drinks on hand or something like that. But it's definitely, there's differences, especially in the U.S. and we also find when we go to Europe, between hotels and more of like the apartment stays. So eager to dive in to that, and I guess we could start. It seems like we have a pretty full house right now.
Yeah.
We have quorum.
Quorum. So why don't we start a little bit with like the super chains and just like why you'd pick one over another. I mean, from my perspective, I travel a lot for work, and anybody else who travels a lot for work knows that you can get a lot of good benefits if you kind of stick with one super chain over another, because you can develop status and get a bunch of freebies that way, whether it's free breakfast, better Wi-Fi, waters, access to club floors and club rooms can be pretty cool at some of like the nicer hotels. And those are like the
high-end hotels more than...
Yeah, at like the nice hotels. For instance, when we were in Chile and Santiago, we stayed at the Ritz-Carlton.
But even at like a Hilton, they often have kind of a Hilton Honors Club section that might have free food or something.
And the way that kind of works, you go in, you get your, usually that's where they have like breakfast for their members, so you can go, you get good breakfast. They'll usually have some sort of like happy hour thing in the evening, so you can go get a free drink or two, and maybe some like little plates and snacks. So for instance, when we were in Santiago staying at the Ritz, what we would do for dinners is we would basically go and we would eat there, because even though it's small plates, it's like buffet style, so you could really kind of get your fill. And it was a good way for us to just save a little bit of money, since we were splurging a bit on our hotel accommodation, and eat and drink and have a good time with some other people at the hotel, and good way to meet people too. Which is kind of a cool thing. And one of the things about, do you want to stay at a hotel versus a hostel, one of the best things about a hostel, for instance, is the ability to kind of have a community and kind of talk to people, make new friends while you're traveling. Not as likely to happen at the super hotels, like the super chains, like the Hiltons and stuff, even with
Especially
the club space.
If
But
they're like business oriented.
yeah. But
in like an urban city
occasionally, you find a cool person who wants to chat. Maybe has been to the city before and you haven't, and they'll give you a few tips like, "Oh, we just did this and loved it." It's a good way to kind of make some connections and get something that's not just whatever the concierge is telling you to do. So
yeah. Oh, hey, Brenna, welcome. Thanks for joining, too. I actually reached out to Brenna this morning because she travels a lot for work and thought that she might have a few good tips on hotel chains in the U.S. For everybody, too.
Yeah. But for people who don't travel a lot and maybe only go and travel once a year, twice a year sort of thing, and so you're not going to gain a bunch of status at hotels, there's a few ways to get status without that. You can get it with specific with types of credit cards. For instance, if you have the Chase Reserve, I think, you get like automatic status at like SPG or something like that. Same with the Amex Platinum, you can get some automatic status.
Do you get that if you, like I have, so we have the Chase Reserve and the Amex Platinum, like we've mentioned on previous live chats.
Yes, you should have it.
And so, okay, so
she's an authorized user on the Amex Platinum, which we had to pay an incremental fee for, which is actually fairly expensive, so it gives her access to everything.
So that I actually didn't know that. This is brand new information for me, so this is a good chat for me too.
You need to log in and sign up.
Okay, so I guess since I'm an authorized user, it's not just that Derek gets
you should.
the status.
I don't know. We have to check it out.
It sounds like I would also have access to that in case we're ever traveling separately. So I know that I was able to sign up for lounge access separately. So hopefully I can do that with hotel chains.
Yeah. But so if you're not traveling a lot but you still want to get status, that's a good way to do it, is through the credit cards. Again, whenever you're looking at credit cards and like point hacking, which I know Gallivanting Gals does quite a bit, you should always look at whether it's actually economically worth it for the actual fee that you're paying. We find that we have a lot of fees on our credit cards. We actually need to go through and make sure we're actually utilizing them to their full potential.
Yes.
Right now, since with
just
very
having the
travel.
2 cards that we mentioned is for both of us is over $1,000 a year in fees.
Yeah, but you get a lot of that back in things like travel credits and stuff like that, so you can immediately bring down that cost pretty quickly. And then if you utilize the benefits to their fullest, you can actually get a very good value that way. So for instance, I fly into LaGuardia a lot, which is home to one of the Centurion lounges for Amex Platinum. And so I'll always stay there. That's where I'll have like dinner on my way back, get a drink, so I'm saving money for not having to like spend money at the airport and get like Starbucks and things like that. So you can kind of
the amount of money that we save on airport food, because Derek and I fly separately a lot during normal circumstances.
Yeah.
And so we don't even get like economies of scale from eating together, that sort of thing. So just the ability to have free food at almost any airport and free coffee.
Well, it depends, because if she's flying Delta, for instance, with the Amex Platinum, she gets into the Delta lounge, and that's what she normally flies. So she can get in and go to the lounge and hang out, which is nice.
But there's also, like, through the Chase Sapphire Reserve, there's lounge access through a lot of, what is it called? It starts with a P.
Priority
Pass. Thank you.
And by the way, we are not sponsored by any credit cards. No. This is not us like trying to sell anything. Although we should get links, because that's actually a great way to make some money. But we're not that. If you're really interested in points, I highly recommend you go check out like the Points Guy and some of that stuff. They always go through and do a great rundown on like the value of points at the hotels and the airlines and all that kind of stuff and how you can hack it. So highly recommend that. We're not here actually to talk about that. I just got into a little bit of a tangent, so I apologize.
Oh, hey, Eric Brown, by the way. Just want to say a quick hi since I said
welcome, Eric. How you doing? But yeah, so what I would say is that there's ways to get status. If you don't have status, though, and you don't care about status, and it's not worth it for you to get the hotel cards that give you automatic status, that opens up the smaller chains and the boutique hotels as a way to kind of go get a different experience, which we find to be pretty valuable, right?
Correct. Actually, we've had terrific experiences at boutique hotels, and just different types of accommodations. So, that's one of those things that can really make a trip extra special, is to find a place that feels unique and not cookie cutter, not like you're, a little bit more local, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and in our last trip to Amsterdam, for instance, we stayed at a great boutique hotel called the Hotel Asteria, which is this great place. It's like 4 different row houses in a row that have all been converted into a hotel. Very nice, quaint. The rooms are all very kind of old world, traditional.
And we've stayed at bed and breakfasts. We've stayed at one the Blueberry Hill Inn in Norfolk, Connecticut. Really small town charm type local B&Bs. We've stayed at upscale hostels. Not recently. That was more in our 20s. We are not in our 20s anymore. But I think there's just a lot of different types of... Yeah. We've kind of stayed at the whole gamut, if you will.
Yeah. But what I'd say about the smaller hotels and just something to think about is, when you're booking those, typically we'll book through either like hotels.com or one of those types of sites, or at least that's how we'll find the smaller hotels, and we'll use that to figure out the ratings and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll always look at, whether we should book it directly through the hotel or if we should book it, through like hotels.com and whatnot, because when you book through hotels.com, what is it, every 4 nights you get 1 free? Or
no, it's every 10.
Every 10 you get a night free? Okay. It's not as good as I thought, but it's great. So every 10 nights you get 1 free, and you can use that at like a number of different locations. It doesn't have to be at that specific hotel. So it's almost like getting loyalty points at boutique hotels. But what I would say about that is that there might be some downsides if you have to change your plans at the last second, where you've now booked through a third party, so the hotel can't be as can't compromise and things like that. Additionally, some hotels like the Hotel Asteria that we stayed at in Amsterdam had certain freebies that they would give you if you booked directly through them. So
right.
If you stayed for 3 nights in a row, they would give you a free canal tour or something like that through the canals of Amsterdam.
But that's only if you booked directly,
which we didn't do, so we didn't get that. Yeah. Additionally, some of them will have returning member things. Again, the Hotel Asteria, we were returning guests, so we got free breakfast, which is like 18 euros or something like that a day. So we wouldn't have known that if we hadn't spoken to the front desk, if we hadn't looked online. So it's things like that you need to kind of look at, and not just it can pay to do that little bit of extra research before you show up to know what you should get, what you should not. Because my whole thing is that you should always take advantage of all the freebies that things are going to offer you, because that's what you're paying for. So
yeah, exactly. All right, so we'll put a pause on our
let's go look at
talking and catch up on the chat. We've actually missed a lot, so apologies everybody. You guys have been super active today, and we love it because this is such a great topic, we feel, that can be crowdsourced. Everybody has their own experiences and hot tips for accommodations.
Okay. James, did we say hi to James?
Oh, hey,
James Townsend.
Great to see you.
Welcome.
We did not say hi to James yet.
I hope New Jersey's going well. Gallivanting Gals have never stayed in a hostel. real quick about hostels. Hostels are not just for the super young people. It's also for, they're for all ages.
You can book like private rooms too, or double rooms, in many of these days.
Yeah.
So even back when Derek and I were in college, we booked a
there's
a double bed in a hostel.
Yeah, there's a hostel in Paris called the St. Christopher Inn, and it was a little bit out there. I don't remember which however you say that word.
Arrondissement.
Arrondissement. She's taking French Duolingo. Can't you tell?
It's
It's
progressing very slowly, by the way, everybody.
The wine and the cheese.
Yeah, my French is I'm not fluent yet.
No.
Anyway, so.
But we were staying at a place there where basically you had your own room, but I think you still had to like share a shower with like everybody else. So you just look.
But you also have access to a kitchen, which
like
almost every hostel has a communal kitchen, and almost every hostel that we've stayed in at least has free breakfast, basic breakfast.
Yeah.
So that is something to weigh because it can be a really good add to, if you're really trying to budget and save money.
Well, I would say that the benefits of hostels are they're many, right? Usually it's very affordable. You kind of get a built-in community. Mm-hmm. There's usually a lot of cool activities and stuff that they'll do, whether it's a walking tour in the mornings on certain days, pub crawls at night.
They even have organized day trips.
Yeah, and great ways to kind of like meet a bunch of people from all over the world.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing. I remember when I was staying at a hostel in Edinburgh back in college. That was an awesome experience. Like my favorite solo travel I've ever done, where I got to meet a lot of cool people. I got to like hike up Arthur's Seat with a random Mexican professor. Like it was very cool, and highly recommend kind of doing.
There are certain packing items that you need to think about
with hostels. Yeah.
With hostels that you don't need to think about with other types of accommodations, such as flip-flops for the communal shower and stuff like that.
Locks for your locker, so you're not relying just on the locker that they provide you at the hostel, things like that, because you want to be safe with your stuff, and if you're traveling with gear and cameras and stuff, you want to be very careful and make sure that that's all safe and whatnot.
And also, I think like a microfiber towel. A lot of hostels will list off whether or not you need to bring your own linens and stuff like that. I don't think I've ever stayed at one where I've needed to bring my own linens, but it's an important thing to just make sure you know. Or else maybe you might have to like rent the linens, or like usually that they'll have some way that you can pay extra to use them.
Yeah, and hostels have there's some great websites out there for people who are looking into hostels.
Hostel World is like the biggest one.
Yeah, Hostel World is the best one, or at least that used to be the best one. I don't know if it still is. And you can find some really nice ones though, and like great locations like within the cities and stuff. I stayed in hostels in like Granada, near the Alhambra. I stayed in
right by
Paris.
The castle in Edinburgh.
Yeah, Edinburgh. Like you can stay in some really cool ones, or you can have some like really bad ones. I stayed in one hostel in London that was right by the train station, and they had I got the top bunk, and there was overhead lights that unfortunately always had light streaming through them because we were so close to the train station. There's a bunch of overhead lights, and so it's just kind of like trying to sleep with like a light in my face. So look them up. Buyer beware.
I've been in hostels before though that like an entire family rented out a room, for example. So it was multi-generational. They all slept on different bunks in the room. So if you're a family or if you're traveling with a big group of friends, and you want to all kind of be together and save money, it can be a really cool option.
Yeah. Well, I would say the best thing is that you have access to like a kitchen, basically, which is similar to if you were to get like an apartment through like VRBO or something. You have access to like a community, so if you want to actually meet people, it's a great thing for that. It's usually way more affordable than a hotel. And it gives you a lot of flexibility where you don't have to worry about doing an extended stay at like a hotel or at an apartment where maybe it only really makes sense if you're there for 4 nights or 5 nights in a row. You can stay at a hostel for 2 nights and it still makes a lot of sense. So But that's our hostel talk, I guess.
Well, I guess the last thing is that there's not as many good ones in the U.S. probably as there are in like Europe. The infrastructure, the hostel ecosystem is really, really strong in Europe.
Yeah.
But
there's
not
some
here.
there's some in the U.S. If you look, you can find some, but it's not as prevalent as in the.
So I think if you're like, for a lot of Europeans, they'll come here and want to do that kind of experience of staying in hostels across the U.S. As they might know from back where they're from, and it can definitely be not the same. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brenna, happy Sunday, everyone. Okay, Mark Finley. Every time I stay at a nice hotel, I always wonder why I spent the extra money. I'm the kind of person that's fine with either a Super 8 or a La Quinta, maybe a Hampton Inn if I'm really splurging.
Hampton Inns have great breakfast.
They do, actually. And we stayed at a lot of like Hyatt places and things like that.
Actually, Hyatt Place has been something that we've doubled down on in recent years, and what's interesting about the Hyatt Places is that we've found that no matter which ones we're at, all the rooms anywhere that we've stayed at a Hyatt Place all kind of feel like the same room. They do a really good job at consistency.
Yeah.
And like the furniture is kind of the same modernized stuff. The differences can be found in like the bathrooms, the views, but the actual layout just is like, oh, I've been here before.
Yeah. The lobbies can be very different, strikingly different. But yeah, no, I mean, we stayed at a Hyatt Place at in Moab. We stayed at one in Salt Lake City, Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah.
We stayed them in a lot of. We stayed at one in Montevideo, in Uruguay. Kind of all over the place, which is kind of fun. And I'd say Hyatt Places in South America are actually a little bit nicer than the Hyatt Places in the U.S. would be.
I'm just going to quickly correct Derek. We did not stay at a Hyatt Place in Montevideo. It was a Hyatt Centric, which is kind of like their urban
it's like an Aloft.
equivalent. Yeah, like an Aloft hotel.
But it was much nicer than any Alofts I've stayed at.
But we actually, I should speak to the reason why we looked at Hyatts a little bit more, because we used to be really big into Hilton and trying to get up our Hilton points more and more. And we find that that's because the opportunities to redeem our points with Hilton are a little bit stronger if we're looking at redeeming them in Europe. Hilton has a really good amount of hotels, anywhere from a DoubleTree and Hilton kind of 3 and 4 star level, almost everywhere I feel like in Europe. And then sometimes if you're in a bigger city in Europe, like a London or Paris or Amsterdam, they'll have the Waldorfs
or the
Conrads, and those are super nice. So if you've stayed at kind of like a 3-star hotel chain for an entire week, kind of across the U.S., and then you want to all of a sudden kind of splurge and say, okay, I want to redeem a night or two of my rewards points. We did that last fall in London. So Derek had work meetings all in London for probably 4 days straight. So I flew out with him and joined him, and we flew out on a red-eye on Friday night. And so we had to, put up ourselves for Saturday night and Sunday night because his work meetings didn't start till Monday. So we redeemed a lot of Hilton points and stayed at the Waldorf right in the center of London, and it was there was good things about that and bad things about that, and we'll talk about that now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you redeem points for a room, they typically just give you the most basic room that they have, and so or at least that's what we redeemed our points on, because it was a massive deal. It was no points at all basically to stay there.
I think it was very discounted amount of points.
Yeah, so we were like, okay, let's hop on it. I know it's going to be the basic room, but who cares? And it was the most basic room you could imagine. I mean, it was on the top floor, where the roof meets the building, so it's kind of slanted and awkward. Super awkward footprint for the room that was really, it's hard to get around the bed. It was nice, but it was
and we're not
awkward,
big
tiny
people, and we had a challenge getting around
the bed and stuff. like you had to like basically climb on the bed to get to the other side of the room and whatnot. You definitely couldn't get your suitcase over there, so it definitely wasn't fantastic, but the location was fantastic, and it was like a really great location by some of the different like there's some theaters over there, and there's like walking
it was
distance
right in
to
like Covent Garden by the West End theaters.
Awesome
so
location.
Close to almost every major tourist.
Walking distance for me for work. It was really great, but the room left something to be desired, so that's something to think about if you're doing that. And I would say, was it the luxury experience we were looking for? Probably not, but we're not, when we're going to London, we're not, paying to like stay in our room all day and stuff. All we really cared about was the bed, and if the bed's comfortable, and the bed was comfortable and clean, and it's still the Waldorf, which is very nice.
We talk about a whole other topic about unclean rooms that I've experienced.
At a hostel.
Hostels, hotels.
Actually, no, that was a hotel.
Yeah. Anyway,
Italy.
Let's not jump into that topic.
Okay.
So Brenna's saying I know, Brenna was supposed to be in New Zealand actually right now. Planned on going to Queenstown, Marlborough, and Auckland. We'll be trying later this year. Yeah, I know that you were supposed to be in New Zealand this week, which is a huge bummer.
Yeah. And so Brenna says that while she was there, she was planning on staying at an Airbnb, a boutique hotel, and a Bonvoy hotel, which is a nice mix. Bonvoy, by the way, are like, I hate their commercials, like on the airplanes and stuff, whenever they're doing like their like Bonvoy, like that's horrible. I don't know why they chose that as their new market. Somebody got paid a lot of money for that. But just
so everybody knows, Bonvoy is Marriott and SPG combined, right?
Yeah.
Starwood.
Which I really like, Marriott and Starwood and whatnot. That's actually who I'm trying to do more with now, because I like their hotels and their brands. I mean, that's like the Ritz-Carlton and the JW Marriotts and like all that stuff. So that's really great. And we have status with them for redeeming points and also getting good like freebies and stuff when you stay places. I mean, at Starwood branded hotels, formerly Starwood, now that they've been acquired by Marriott, but those are really great hotels.
So Brenna asked, I am skipping just real quick, and I'm going to go back to your other comments. But if you could pick one of the cards, like the hotel cards, which one would you keep and why?
Platinum card. I'd probably keep the Amex Platinum because it's a good card kind of all around, and they've really upped their game in terms of like points that you earn through travel and things like that. You get like 5 times miles, I think, booking directly with airlines and whatnot, which is the only way we book flights. And it gives you access to Delta lounges when you're flying Delta. It gives you access to Centurion lounges when you're flying just anywhere with a Centurion lounge, and others with the Priority Pass. The only thing that I would say is like, it's not good like from the fact that like you don't get bonus points when you order at like a restaurant and things like that. So like if you're looking at why we have both,
if you look at your lifestyle, and your lifestyle also includes like restaurant, like eating at restaurants a lot, or ordering from, or using Ubers a lot, or something like that, certain other cards give you points, a lot of points for those types of experiences and services too. Yeah,
so for instance, when you use your Chase Sapphire Preferred card, you get I think it's 3 times points at restaurants, as well as on all travel, which includes taxis, subways, and a bunch of other stuff too that you don't get with the Amex Platinum. So it's kind of knowing when to use each card in different scenarios and kind of maximizing your point game. That's the whole travel hacking.
So I just want to, in case because I think she might have been asking, since we have like the Bonvoy, the Hilton Honors, and like those memberships too, and the credit cards that go along with those, is there one that kind of earns more than others, or are they all sort of the same?
No, I mean they're all just like, they're good to use when you're staying at those hotels, because they usually give you like a massive, like the Hilton card I think gives you like 10 times points when you use it at Hilton's. So like that's the time when you'd be like, all right, I'm gonna use the Hilton card. But it's really about having to hit the minimum spend to get like your free nights or something like that. So like our Hilton card, I think after we spend a certain amount of money in a year, you get your like free night or two at any of their properties worldwide. And so when you have something like that, you can actually really maximize the value and get your $95 of fees or whatever covered by staying at a place like a Waldorf in Amsterdam, which is usually going to be like $500 a
Yeah,
night,
which we've never stayed
or
at.
something crazy, which we have not stayed at.
It's always so
expensive to get there.
prestigious.
It's the place I want to stay,
Yeah.
but it's expensive to get to, so we've never used that for our Hilton redemptions.
But I think Mark Finley, just going back to Mark Finley's original comment of like, if you're okay with staying at some of those, like 3-star,
budget-friendly
hotels, then definitely do it. We aren't not okay with it. We just don't happen to go to as many destinations that actually have those.
Well, no, that's not true. We go to every place that we go to has those.
Has a La Quinta or a Super 8? Those
Well,
are like more.
But they have like budget-friendly options. We go to London, we could stay at a budget-friendly hotel in London.
Yeah. Sorry, I was not saying the same thing as maybe was being perceived. But yes, there are tons of budget-friendly options. And I always just try to read the reviews on those and make sure that we choose the right ones.
Yeah.
I actually stayed with Brenna in Portland, Maine at a Hampton Inn that was phenomenal. I would totally stay there again. Highly recommend it if anybody's going to Maine.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that we're really behind. Hey Karen Mack, welcome. Great to have you on.
Here, so Katie Smith, what's your preferred hotel group? So currently,
okay. So what I always say is it all depends on where you're trying to redeem your points. So what we found is that Hilton's really great for redeeming in Europe if you want to redeem at a very high-end hotel. If you want to redeem in Europe, then a lot of these chains will have options to do so.
I think Carlton actually has like the Radisson Blu and stuff. Those are huge in Europe.
Yes,
so that's one that we would probably not stay at in the U.S. typically. But if you're looking for European stuff, like that's a great chain.
If you're planning to redeem in South America, by far and away, Hyatt we found is the best hotel.
Well, we don't know if that's true all across South America. That's definitely true, though, in Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile, where we went. We definitely did that there.
Yeah, so what we advise is to do your research on, I guess, what's coming up for you in the next year or two travel-wise, and what your hopes are in terms of hotel level too, and where you could stay more locally to kind of earn points or whatever, and then redeem them in a really fun, splashy way if you want to when you're abroad or something like that. But
our favorite, because the question is what's your preferred hotel group, I'd say that right now it's probably the Bonvoy, the Marriotts and SPGs, because we like those hotels and we like the breadth of the offering that they have. They're good, domestically as well as internationally. That said, some places we go to, Hyatt is the best option to stay at, so we'll stay at Hyatts and whatnot. So while I do want to be loyal to places, we do find ourselves kind of like scattering around, and I understand that that's not necessarily the best because you get more benefit the higher your status is. But yeah, I mean, we've kind of stopped going to Hilton so much.
It's not like we dislike Hilton's, it's just the way that we want to redeem and collect points. Also, once Marriott and Starwood kind of officially merged and created Bonvoy, it just opened up so many options for that loyalty program. Yeah. I know that the Gallivanting Gals also do a lot with ones that we haven't talked about. What is it, IH?
Yeah, she just says. So they use ISG a lot, which is the Intercontinental.
Which is also a great one. We just haven't touched it as much. I'm not seeing where you're pointing.
Sorry, I'm eating banana bread. So she talks about the Intercontinental, the Kimpton, the Regent. Yeah. And they're in 100 new boutique hotels.
I've read that IHG has kind of gone around and started buying, merging with or acquiring a lot of those smaller hotel chains like Kimpton in the past few years, and it's really helped grow their breadth of opportunities within their loyalty program. Are you
Yeah.
trying to moderate this?
I was thinking about it.
It's fine, whatever. It's been there long enough.
Yeah, so we, I was just trying to think. So ISG, I've stayed at ISGs in like Hong Kong and a few other places like the Intercontinental. We've stayed at Kimpton's in Seattle.
Yeah.
We like them. We think they're pretty cool. They have a
and I mean,
even
funky, Holiday
unique
Inns
style,
can be great,
which is kind of cool.
Especially Holiday Inns if you're like doing a RV trip around the country. I mean, they have really great hotels at some of those kind of RV destinations.
Yeah.
What else? Malcolm Hogan. London hotels are known for being small. That is true, and that's something actually that we can touch on. So in a lot of major cities, including New York, people get so shocked with how small hotel rooms are in like New York City or in any European city, and when you're so used to having a lot of space to move around, or so used to having like a king size bed at home. It can be a little bit jarring to have to kind of shuffle around anybody that you're staying with or a bed. When I was in London by myself after Derek had to fly over to Switzerland for a meeting last fall, my hotel room was so tiny for just even me, and I'm 5'1". Like, it was so small that I remember calling Derek while he was in Switzerland and be like, I'm super glad. Like, I like the aesthetic, and they did great design within this room and a lot of space saving ideas. But this hotel room is so small that if you were here with me, it would be almost impossible.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Galvin and Gals is saying that the Amex Platinum, you get gold status with both Hilton and Marriott, includes authorized users, which is cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's amazing. That's good to know.
Malcolm is saying that he books his hotels through Qantas to get Qantas frequent flyer points, and you can do that also with like Delta and American and a few others. So definitely look into that if you're trying to maximize your point game.
And you can also book like entire vacations with those too, and sometimes get some good deals. Where they'll be like, okay, well, we see that you're doing a round trip ticket to London. Are you interested in a hotel and rental car or something too? Yeah. Which, by the way, don't rent a car in London, but that was just an example.
Yeah. I've never done that, so I can't really speak to if that's a good deal or not. Eric Brown is saying that he loves Hyatt's status, but they don't have as many hotels as Hilton or Marriott, but they are more consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brenna, I think too, it depends on where you are and what you're looking for on the trip. Like a boutique hotel in a smaller town, i.e. wine countries, is nicer to me than a chain hotel. Yeah, no, I'd agree. When we were doing
we stayed at like a big DoubleTree in Sonoma County, just massive, that does conventions and stuff like that. And it's funny when you're driving around to different wineries during the day and doing tours at like these tiny family-owned places, and then going back to your hotel room and you're like, oh wow, back in corporate America again.
Yeah, but that said, like, the DoubleTree can also hook you up though with like free tastings at different wineries and stuff like that, because they have a lot of relationships and stuff, and there's some value to be had with that.
It depends on the hotel, of course. Yeah.
So Brenna is saying, I'm personally a Bonvoy fan. They have options at different price ranges all over the world. Although since they merged, the points needed to be redeemed a night have increased. So they've devalued their program, which is a bummer. Some can be pricey based on the time of the year. Yep. So Galvant and Gals is saying that they find that they get better rooms when they book direct.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely true.
I would agree with that. I also feel like one thing that Derek and I tend to ask when we first check in is not necessarily to get upgraded, but we ask if there's any way to have a room that has more natural light. That would be really ideal. And actually, for me, it's more because sometimes I might want to film a video or something while I'm staying. And what happened to us in Amsterdam last month was they kind of like were like, oh sure, and they upgraded us without us even asking for it. And we had only stayed there once before, many years ago, so it wasn't because of a loyalty thing. So just kind of
Well, they had already kind of put us into an upgrade room, and then they said, hey, if you want to go look at it and see if it's going to work for you, and if not, I'll see what I can do about moving it around, because we'd come in like super early because we were taking a red eye, and they're like, most of our guests haven't like checked in yet, so if we can move some rooms around, we will.
Yeah, and so we came back, and because they had like a bellman come take us, and they're like, is this enough natural light for you? Yes.
There's a ton of natural light.
Yes, it sure is. Thank you. So that's one little hot tip that we have kind of picked up in the last year.
Yeah. And Brenna's pointing out that she's going to just say, with all the stuff with COVID, that customer service when booking direct has been way more helpful than if you use a third-party booking service. That's definitely true, because otherwise you have to go through the third-party service, and they don't care as much about loyalty. If you go through the actual hotel, they do care about loyalty and what people say about them. So, they're more incentivized to give you a good experience.
Yeah.
So, Brenna, yay, French Duolingo.
Yeah.
15 minutes a day.
Yesterday for me was 7 minutes, and most of it was just relearning the words for wine and cheese. So, like I'm saying, my French Duolingo,
Fromage.
It's happening, but it's slowly happening.
Yeah. It's funny because we'll be there and she'll hit the play button to hear how it's supposed to say, and we'll listen to it like 15 times and be like, we can't say that.
Well,
I don't know how to say that.
It's because they choose the most French person to basically speak these words, and so I called Derek over and I was like, come here, you gotta hear this, and I pressed play, and it was like the accent was so beautiful but so thick that I'm like, my tongue does not do this. Like, I am going to say these words back and it is not going to sound remotely the same.
It's like I have no idea how to form these sounds in my mouth, but that's why I might do Spanish, because I actually know how to speak that one. Okay, so Malcolm is saying, hostels with the lads, hotel with the wife for me. Good sir.
Yeah,
I like it.
That's a smart way to do it. And so one thing that we can talk about too is like with Airbnbs, which we haven't gotten into yet. I've done a lot of those, especially on like bachelorette parties. But I have stayed at an Airbnb in a lot of scenarios. I've done it by myself. I have done it as a couple's trip, and I've done it as like a girls' trip, and I think I've also done it as a family.
Done what?
Like stayed at Airbnbs.
Oh, yeah.
So there's pros and cons for each of those scenarios that we can get into after catching up on this chat.
Yep. So Eric Brown says that he stayed at a hostel next to Wrigley Field, and it was perfect. Going to the Cubs game. And a hostel one street over from South Beach in Miami, which you can't beat for $30 a night.
Holy cow. I didn't even know there was a hostel by Wrigley Field, first of all. And I used to live next to Wrigley Field. Yeah. So that is really good news.
Yeah, so like I said, like even though people don't necessarily do hostels as much in the United States, there's a bunch of them around, and if you do your research, you can find them, as Eric Brown has shown us.
Yeah.
Malcolm, motor camps are a cheap option in New Zealand. So I assume that's with like motorhomes and things like that, caravans and whatnot.
Like where you would park your motorhome, I would assume.
Yeah. So one thing that hopefully isn't happening anymore. So are you guys... okay. Somebody was saying that there's a lot of bad static or noise or something earlier. Hopefully it's okay.
I wonder if it's the fan on the computer or something.
Yeah, it might be. Okay.
We didn't hear it, so I'm sorry if it's still going. Yeah. Let us know if it's still going, and we can play around with a few things.
Yeah. We also have the air conditioning going, but it's not that loud, so hopefully that's not it.
So I have an external microphone, by the way, that we have been waiting for Amazon to deliver this one hookup that I can plug it into my computer for like a month. But because it's not a non-essential item, even though it was like a prime item, it was delayed for a very long time. Yeah. So it should arrive literally in another week or so. So hopefully the sound quality is going to be even more improved for our live chats once that does.
Yeah, so Katie's telling us that the sound sounds good to her.
Good.
Cool,
Okay,
thanks.
Katie.
So James is saying the last time I stayed at a B&B was in Baltimore in 2007 during an event organized by a guy I met on a Disney fan website. Wow. The event was called Baltimouse, and we all did, our own accommodations. That's a great name for an event, Baltimouse.
Yes.
I assume you are a huge Disney fan. It sounds like
there's
so. That's
so
pretty
many
cool.
Disney fans. Like I love the community
Mouseketeers.
that those big Disney fans create with themselves too. Like there's all these online forums and all these just trips that you can do. And
I had a great experience actually going to Disney World. That's the one in Florida, right? World?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Disney World senior year, spring break. We did Daytona Beach, and then the last day before we headed back, we went down and went through Orlando because we had some buddies who were doing the Disney College program.
Yeah.
And so they were bellhops on the Hollywood Tower of Terror or whatever it's called, and they basically got us into the park for free. Like me and like 3 buddies or something like that. So we all went into the park for free. One of our buddies is a big dude and he was wearing this like hot pink shirt that had like a Minnie Mouse like body and then his head coming out of it, which was just awesome. And he had many people like stopping him like, can we take a picture with you? So he was kind of like an attraction while we were there, which was pretty fun. And he's just like goofball, so it was a great time.
Now we don't know anybody who works at Disney, so
now we don't know anybody at Disney, but it was a great time because we got in for free. Because of this dude's shirt, we got stopped by somebody and they said, "Hey, listen, we're doing a cold open for this restaurant that we're just reopening. I love your shirt. Here's some free like vouchers to go get whatever you want from the place." So we got like a free meal. Like basically we did the math, and like if you were to pay for the experience that we did, it was like hundreds of dollars per person that we basically saved. So we were super happy about it. We got to like skip to the front of the lines on all the roller coasters.
As college guys, they were in their element.
It was amazing. We got to skip to the front of the line for the Tower of Terror, and then they let us stay on for multiple rides in a row, which was pretty cool. And then they took us around. We got to see like the behind the scenes, like the control room with all the, like cameras and everything, which was it was a cool experience. It was pretty special. So.
Yeah.
Something to think back on. And I remember it much better than my trip when I was a child, because I don't quite remember that as much.
Yeah.
Gallivanting Gals loves Hyatt houses. We've never stayed at Hyatt houses. We'll have to check that out.
We'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah. This is where the furnace blower sound or train.
Yeah. I'm so sorry if we had some background noise that we were completely unaware of.
Malcolm says that it sounded like the house was flooding.
Oh, really? Sometimes Derek just brushes his hand over the thing and it makes a lot of noise. But and I always have to tell him to stop. But yeah, keep us posted if that happens again. We'll figure out what it is. Could have been there.
Yeah. All right, so James is telling us that unfortunately the Abercrombie, located in the Arts District across from the Symphony Hall, I believe burned down. It costs only $99 per night. Good times. Well, that's sad.
Yeah.
Where is that? Is that? I don't know where Abercrombie was. What city it was?
I'm not sure. I feel like you just moved around a lot in the chat, so I lost.
I'm working my way down.
Okay, and then Gallivanting Gals is saying they also do Marriott SPG for Ritz-Carlton's, Autographs, and Fairfields. Yeah.
Yeah,
the Autograph collection is a place that Brenna and I were looking at going in Hawaii.
All right, so Gallivanting Gals is saying that they love their Platinum, but would keep the Reserve if they had to let one go because they found that the ultimate rewards to be more valuable than Amex rewards.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and it depends because each of those you can redeem at different, airlines and hotel chains and whatnot. So we have a lot of Chase points and we have a lot of Amex points.
Yeah, and for me especially, because I fly Delta most of the time, the Amex works best for me. But I mean, really the Chase one is phenomenal as well. Yes, Brenna, I love the Hampton Inn in Maine.
Gallivanting Gals is saying that the Radisson is really good, especially in Scandinavia.
Yes.
So the Radisson Blue
we've seen them in really good locations all over Europe.
And they're nice hotels.
Yeah.
Brenna's agreeing that she likes the Autograph hotels. That's her go-to whenever possible. Mm-hmm. And she travels a lot, so that's helpful.
She travels every week for work, except for right now.
Malcolm is letting us know he's hearing a lot of hotel chains he's never heard of before.
Yeah, I don't know if New Zealand...
It's a whole new world, man.
I don't know if New Zealand has them all. I have not looked into hotel accommodation options in New Zealand as much because we haven't gone. But I'm going to start because I would love to visit.
So Gallivanting Gals, we found a Holiday Inn next to the tube station in Kensington. That is great. It has a club dining room for elites, which we are, so we got free food, coffee, and the rooms are large.
Oh, that's great. My family stayed
cool.
in London at a DoubleTree hotel by the Angel Northern Line tube station in London. What was that, in 2018? That we walked into. We were in an Airbnb during that trip. Yeah. So we walked in and saw their room, and it was pretty large as well. Had like wonderful air conditioning, which because we were there.
It was a heat wave.
Because we were there during this incredibly crazy heat wave. It was a very nice retreat. At the
time, I think it was like one of their hottest, longest heat waves on record.
Yeah, we ended up buying a fan for our Airbnb because we just couldn't take it. And normally you would not need air conditioning in London, but I think it was like Fahrenheit level, it was like 90, Celsius level, it was like 30. It was hot. Anyway, so, but yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's some great, like, budget-friendly American hotels that you can find, especially in the bigger cities in Europe.
Yeah, so James Townsend is saying that New York City hotel rooms are super small. I don't quite get what he's saying about are so small that you need to leave them to change your mind. But yeah, New York City hotel rooms can be quite small. But again, when you go to a place like New York, you're there to.
We always tell people to stay in Long Island City. We used to live in Long Island City for 4 years before we moved here to Chicago. Long Island City is the first stop into Queens from Manhattan, and it's right across the East River from Manhattan, and a lot of the hotels there have great views, and there's the entire neighborhood is very new. There's phenomenal restaurants, like there's 2 Michelin star restaurants over there, guys. Trust me, Queens is not some place to just avoid. That part of Queens is really cool. So,
and it's super convenient to get into
and so
Manhattan.
It's cheap, slightly cheaper than Manhattan, and has, I think, 5 different subway lines that go over there, so you can get anywhere in Manhattan or Brooklyn really quickly.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
and just the neighborhood is terrific, and the views are out of this world.
There's a modern art museum there. There's a bunch of really cool street art because it kind of used to be a mecca for street artists and graffiti and whatnot. Really cool murals.
Yeah, there's a state
good
park.
coffee.
There's a state park also right along the East River that has this boardwalk that you can walk down. A lot of the locals will be playing out there with like their kids, and it's, at least when we lived there, was very much unknown to tourists at that point. Like, tourists would typically go to like Dumbo in Brooklyn to get a similar experience, but you're going to be getting a much more localized just park atmosphere and view of Manhattan, especially at sunset, if you go to the state park in Long Island City.
And that state park specifically is home to the Pepsi Cola sign that you can kind of see from Manhattan. Which I think used to be on top of one of the Pepsi bottling plants out there.
There used to be a Pepsi bottling plant there, and then it got torn down and replaced with luxury high-rise.
Yeah. Do you have a resource? So Katie Smith,
yes.
Do you have a resource or way to figure out when it's better to use points versus pay?
We don't, but We
Yeah,
kind of use.
well, no, I do.
Derek does.
So I would use the point. So typically, so every year the points guy goes in and he'll go in and do a valuation for what's the value of different points, whether it's Chase, American Airlines, etc. And so what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll kind of use his point estimation for value of like 1 cent a point or whatever it is, and do the math to say, okay, it's 60,000 points that equates to X dollars, and I'll look at how much does it actually cost us for the room per night, or if we use points, and so you can kind of see what the value is you're getting there, and kind of what the redemption rate is that you're getting. So that's kind of how I figure out how to maximize points, and if I'm getting a good redemption, I'll use points. If not, we'll use money. If we're really just trying to save money for whatever reason, we might use points even at a bad redemption rate, but typically we try to maximize that.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of people try to save their points from like Chase and Amex for airline points, because people find that they can get pretty good redemption rates, especially if they're splurging to get kind of a premium ticket, whether that's like business class to Europe or Asia or whatnot. You can get some pretty good redemption values there.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I have to
bunch
back
of
up.
stuff.
A lot of new things came in. And then, sorry, I got lost.
Malcolm is saying, flew from New Zealand to Europe in business class last year using Qantas points. 24 hours of flying. Business is the way to go. I highly agree, Malcolm. Anytime I'm doing kind of like a big long haul, business class to me is like the
Derek
thing to do.
will redeem his points immediately
Every
before
time.
Trying to fly economy on a long haul.
Every time.
He got way too used to lie flat seats.
The first time you get a lie flat seat in business class for like a 9-hour flight or something like that, it's hard to go back. I'm spoiled now. So
he is spoiled now. He gets to fly business for business purposes a lot.
Yeah. Now
Whereas I just get like whatever seat's open.
Personally, I would probably never pay the cash value for those tickets. I would never actually pay that. But yeah, it's a great way to redeem points and kind of splurge and treat yourself right and whatnot. And if you have limited time when you get to a place, it's also, you're going to be more refreshed. You're going to be able to recover from jet lag quicker and be able to like kind of get out, do things and whatnot.
But I actually have a video on my channel from last summer. I think it was last July, where it's long haul flight essentials, and that's specifically a video made for flying economy long haul. So if that's something that you're looking at doing, when it's safe to fly again, definitely check that video out, because I break down every single item that I have in my personal bag that I bring on with me that will affect my comfort on the plane. So I think it's an important video for anybody who is traveling economy.
So like last year, for instance, and it also, just getting back onto that, so we did China last year, and what we did is we bought tickets, economy, going there and back, and then I was able to use miles to upgrade our flight there, both of us, into business class. So we had business class going to China, which was great, and then we did economy coming back, because we knew that coming back we didn't want to actually sleep on the plane. We wanted to try to stay awake so that when we landed we'd just be dead tired, and we'd try to get back onto our normal like US rhythm.
Yeah.
And so because of, if you're going to be awake, being in regular economy is fine, because you still get the entertainment, you get your meals. It's not as good of a meal, but whatever. And if you're going to stay awake, you don't have to be like in a lie flat seat. You just keep getting Heineken's brought to you and watch your movies. So that's what we did, and it was fine. I had a rather large Chinese gentleman sitting next to me, so I was a little bit crowded in the middle.
Who never once got up to go to the bathroom, I'm pretty sure.
He slept the whole time.
Yeah.
The moment he sat down in his chair, he just kind of did this. He fell asleep.
Like it was a 13-hour flight, and we were like...
It was intense. He only woke up whenever we had to get up to go use the restroom, which I was drinking a lot of Heineken, so unfortunately I was having him get up too often. But it was a good time. I was just like, he's still asleep.
Yeah.
I was like, he must have pulled an all-nighter.
It's an interesting, like, if you're somebody who just doesn't get up during a flight, it's interesting if you are choosing to sit in the aisle row. Anyway, so
Katie Smith.
Yeah, so Katie Smith was saying also, how was Uruguay? We loved Uruguay.
Big fan.
We were specifically on the south coast the whole time, and we took the ferry from Buenos Aires over to Colonia del Este, which I think out of all the places that we went...
Colonia del Sacramento.
Oh, I'm sorry. I combined two places at once. Colonia del Sacramento is where we stayed the first few days. Specifically at a really tiny boutique hotel called El Charco, that is right on the Rio de la Plata, the river. And so the river there, because it's kind of like...
I mean, it's massive.
At the mouth of the river, it's a giant river delta. You can't see across to the other side. So it's kind of like you're staying right on the beach. You are staying right on the beach. It's just a river instead of an ocean. And so in particular, that was really cool to watch the sunset and sunrise from. And the architecture was literally colonial, Spanish colonial, and so there was like cobblestone streets, and I think the hotel itself was built in the 1600s, converted into very modern amenities, and the restaurant there was top notch. So we loved not only that hotel but that entire town, and exploring that town just felt really like fun and low key.
Yeah, they have like a lighthouse or something like that you can go up to, and you kind of have a bird's eye view then of the city, or it's a town, it's not a city, but pretty cool. Very, very windy.
There is a Sheraton there too, but if you can, I would stay at El Charco.
Yeah, El Charco is really cool. Highly recommend it.
And then we drove to Montevideo, which was a very different place, even though it's the same country. It was very modern port city. So again, it's right on the river, and there was just cargo ships everywhere. The downtown area was kind of cool, but we would say don't spend a lot of time there. Definitely get out into like the smaller areas of Uruguay.
A couple days and
feel the culture.
Probably like 1 or 2 days in Montevideo is probably all you need.
Yeah.
They have a pretty cool square with some like really neat buildings and whatnot that are pretty iconic, but
there wasn't a lot to do as a tourist.
I mean, we weren't trying to do too much. We used it as kind of like all right, let's like relax a little bit, let's enjoy the hotel, and
but like we said, we stayed at a Hyatt Centric there, and really enjoyed that hotel, and the hotel bar was really cool.
It was nice.
So a cool, just a good place to earn or redeem hotel points, I suppose. And then we drove down to the very, very east tip of Uruguay, Punta del Este. And there's this one hotel that I totally want to stay at if we ever go back there.
Speaking of
but
boutiques,
you have to book it super far in advance because it is like a top boutique hotel. Absolutely stunning, right on the water, called Casa Pueblo, and it was built by this local Uruguayan artist. And it kind of is like a Santorini vibe, where the hotel is completely whitewashed on this cliff overlooking the waterfront. They have like beautiful pools, and there's a museum there that houses a lot of his art. Google it, Casa Pueblo in Uruguay, and you won't regret it. Even the photos, take your breath away. And then that place is really close to Punta del Este, which is kind of a hotspot tourist destination of South America. A lot of like the rich people of Brazil and Argentina will go there on the weekend, and we kind of equated it to like the Hamptons of South America meets South Beach, because there's a lot of like high-rise hotels there and stuff like that. Like all the food's expensive, but you kind of go there to like see and be seen, and like bring your bikini and just like party it up. But I don't know if we would necessarily go back there versus
and bikinis
try to stay
in South America are a little different than here.
Yeah. Yeah, South America, just so all the ladies know, if you're wearing a bikini or a bathing suit that covers your entire tush, then you are being very modest.
Yeah. I skipped a little bit more than I thought. All right, so Eric Brown left. So sorry we didn't see this until now, but thanks for joining us.
If you're rewatching, like you say, bye, Eric.
Bye, Eric.
And then, hey, to Travel and Tour, Neil and Kimberly. Great to have you guys on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining again.
Sorry, I'm just trying to check out the points.
Galvant and Gal saying we keep a spreadsheet of our points. Oh, girls after my own heart. I love spreadsheets. And status, and sometimes the same hotels are offered on several sites and vary greatly. Totally true. But we always compare how we would earn by paying versus using points.
Yep.
That's cool that you created your own resource. Maybe we can steal your spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, those are really helpful, and I created like a whole spreadsheet when we were doing our honeymoon because we were using a lot of points for that. So there's a ton of trying to max them. I was trying to like min max everything on like, all right, no, we're gonna pay for this one with cash, even though we could do it with points because it's not a good redemption, and that's a good way to do it. I
use spreadsheets myself for household budgeting and for travel budgeting. I haven't done it as much for awards stuff, so that's an interesting idea that I think we'll probably pick up. Yeah.
Gallivanting Gals is that they prefer to use points for luxury versus daily. Makes sense?
Yes.
Typically that's how you're going to get the best redemption value, is going to be at kind of the luxury resorts and whatnot. But at the same time, if you look at certain places like we stayed at the Ritz-Carlton Santiago, it was actually relatively affordable, so it would not have been a good redemption for our points. Instead, we paid for that one with money because it just made more sense.
Yeah. And that happened too at the Rosewood in China. We paid for that after booking it through what is it called? American Express Fine Hotels and Resorts.
Yep.
Which is a benefit that you get with that credit card, the Platinum credit card.
Yep. Which comes with things like free meal credits and stuff like that. So and like a welcome basket or something. So like I think when we checked in, we got like a bottle of wine was waiting for us and stuff like that. So
and we got like $100 off of a dinner there.
Yeah.
So
Gallivanting Gals, they don't fly economy over 4 hours. Nice. Just way worth it for business, or some cases premium economy, like with Virgin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's great.
One thing that I've noticed more and more lately is you can pay attention to what airplane is scheduled for your flight, and sometimes there's like a premium economy that includes like recliner chairs. Basically, you're in a lazy boy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be a really great option without having to like look into the incredible expensive business class. So if you're in, some premium economy is just like, oh, you get 6 inches of extra leg room in a regular economy seat, and some of it is just like an absolute, leather chair, wonderful experience. Something to keep in mind if you want to look at like Seat Guru and try to figure out before booking.
And that's one of the benefits of getting like status on airlines is for instance with American Airlines, I have status, so I'm able to for free book like those more premium seats that anybody else would have to pay like $34 or something like that for. So that's another thing to think about, if you want to like kind of stick to one airline and kind of get that status, so you can actually put yourself into those more comfortable seats, especially for taller people. I'm short, but for those who are taller, and legroom is really important, it's something to think about, and it might be worth splurging that extra $30.
Derek's like 5'6" and I'm 5'1", and if we're in an exit row, we kind of just feel guilty sometimes.
Yeah, I still do. I don't feel guilty at all. But not only so. To Travel and Tours talking about that legroom is really, really important, and that he finds that exit rows can get the job done.
Well, you're Dutch. The Dutch are traditionally very
tall. She's not.
My Dutch grandfather was not, but that was an anomaly.
But that's true. And then I've also found that in some planes, it depends on the plane, but the some of the smaller jets that like American and Delta fly, sometimes their bulkhead seats aren't actually bulkhead. They just meet up on the next class of cabin, and so you actually have a lot of leg room. in those as well. So.
By the way, I just want to jump ahead. I don't know if James Townsend's still on, but thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for.
This has been really great to have you on. All right, sorry, I skipped over. Malcolm Hogan. Once you go to business class, you don't want to go back. That is nice. Certainly true. And Derek has landed in that camp.
I don't know though. After all these months of months of grounding,
are we all reset now?
I might be reset. I might be able to go just like middle seat economy back of the plane and be okay.
One thing too to keep in mind is there are certain seats on airplanes that don't recline, and that can really make or break a especially long haul flight, even if it's just a 3-hour flight. And there's debate about whether to recline your seat generally, but let's say the person in front of you has reclined their seat and you're really tall. If you cannot recline your own, then it can be a little bit miserable.
Yeah, so it's simply too expensive, and Malcolm's saying that from New Zealand to Vienna, it's like $10,000.
There's $10,000 business class tickets from the U.S. to a lot of places too.
Yeah, I mean, U.S. to Europe, you're talking about like $6,000 plus for business class, $8,000. Asia, same thing. So that's why, like, I say I would actually never pay for that. No. But I might.
Unless we win the lottery, which that would be really cool.
Yeah, we win the lotto.
Maybe we would just buy tickets, private at that point.
But for me, I typically look at it as I'll buy the economy ticket and then try to use points to upgrade. That way I can save some points as opposed to just booking like a one-way flight for like 80,000, 100,000, 180,000 points. And that might be a good way to kind of utilize the points economically.
Yeah.
But so James, thank you for joining us. It was great chatting with you. 2 Travel and Tours saying that for that kind of money you can go on 3 7-day cruises.
Seriously.
Which is true. Yeah, I mean you can.
I mean our entire trips to Europe are usually way less than like half, if not.
Yeah, I mean, we typically try to do.
Yeah,
we typically try to do our all-in vacations for like half.
Like a 10-day trip to Europe, we'll say can be roughly maybe 5,000 for us. And certain people that seems like a lot, and certain people that seems like a little. So we won't get into what makes sense for everybody for that type of budget, but that's I mean, for the past 10 years, that's really where we estimate it out at, and if it comes in less, awesome.
Yeah, and what I would say is that we've never actually done a cruise together. I did one back in college. I don't think you've ever been on a cruise.
I'm not much of a cruise person.
Well, you've never been.
That's true. I've never been, so I will go on one at some point.
Yeah,
and then let you guys know.
She'll do a whole video about it. It'd be great.
Yeah.
But I mean, they can be fun, and I was seeing you guys did a thing on. Pros and cons or whatever of all-inclusive resorts versus cruising. And the thing that I was thinking about with that is that from my perspective, the benefit of a cruise is that it's you kind of have this all-inclusiveness where all the food's included, you can eat whatever you want, etc. You don't have to worry about it. Obviously if you're cruising, look in advance and see if you have to book like reservations at the nice restaurants in advance. But otherwise, you don't really have to worry about it, which is nice. You can go use like the gym and all this cool stuff, which is really nice and very similar to the all-inclusives. I think the all-inclusive resorts typically also have the alcohol included, whereas you have to pay for a higher tier, I think, on cruises to get that level, or just pay as you go, kind of a la carte. I know a number of them have like wristbands now that you can kind of scan to get them. But for me, the cool thing about a cruise versus an all-inclusive is I really like that you can go and just do you can do that all-inclusiveness most of the time when you're on your days at sea, but then you stop off at a place you can kind of get into a city and kind of experience a local culture, which is kind of cool. And you can try different ones, whether that's island hopping around the Caribbean, stopping in Belize, going to Mexico. You can kind of get in and go into the city and try to get away from like the stock things that the cruises are offering and try to get to know the local community a little bit.
That reminds me of like one thing that I have been jealous of people that do a lot of, for example, Caribbean cruises is they can say, oh, I've been to 25 countries or something like that. And it's hard when you don't cruise sometimes to be able to tick off as many countries when you have limited vacation time. So if that is a travel goal of yours, to be able to say, oh, I've been to a lot of different places and visited a lot of different cultures, then I certainly wouldn't argue that cruising is a great choice for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would totally go on a Caribbean cruise and try to see a bunch of different places, or try to figure out a way to kind of do it ourselves and island hop a little bit to see, you know, like Nieves and all these other places, which would be pretty cool.
I love Mark Finley because what you just said, because I feel like that's probably what would happen with me. He said, I thought I would hate cruising, but Terry wanted to try one, so I gave in. Now I love them, and we've done 4 of them and have a 5th booked for summer 2021.
Yeah.
I also could imagine if you have a family,
Yeah.
that would be a really, really cool thing to do, where you can have a lot of different activities for the kids.
Yeah, I had a boss who basically loved it because he could just like let his kids run around and do whatever they want, go to the kids' zones and whatnot, and him and his wife could, you know, kind of have some peace and quiet.
And your aunt and uncle were taking, I don't know if it's still going to happen, but they were supposed to take your grandmother on a riverboat cruise in Europe this year, which is a great option for like multi-generational people to travel to who might have a little more limited mobility, like wouldn't be able to do, you know, trains everywhere sort of thing.
Which none of them have issues with mobility.
They don't. I'm sorry, but like
personally, but
I couldn't see your grandmother lifting her suitcase onto 10 different trains around Europe either.
Yeah, no, probably not. But yeah, no, it's a good way to do it, and I would totally do a river cruise. We had a family friend who booked like an entire like ship with his friends basically and did like their own river cruise and stuff, and they were like, wow, that's the way to do it. That'd be really cool. But yeah, we skip some stuff.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, we did skip around, so
Karen
we're just
Mack.
gonna go backwards. So Karen Mack said, we don't have all the amazing credit card points in Canada like you guys. That's such a bummer. That is such a bummer.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. I'm going to actually look into that more because I don't want to be talking about credit card points if it's certainly not available broadly.
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, you know, you have to be really careful with credit cards generally, even in America.
So Gallivant and Gals, they use Seat Guru to find seat sizes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's super important. I ran into issues not just with seat sizes, but also there's a specific type of airplane that has a window seat with no window. The seat is 10A on one of American Airlines flights. It's one of the smaller regional jets, and it is the worst thing ever when you get there and you're like, oh, it's sunset, I've got a window seat, it's going to be awesome, and then you take off from New York and you don't get to see anything because you have no...
There's also interesting, there's like one type of Delta regional jet that the specific row is just one seat in the row, and there's nobody, like it's an aisle seat, but there is literally no seats in the middle or a window next to you, so you kind of have this, you're in this awkward I don't know, lonely one-man row. So I've been put in that row a lot as a standby flyer because people don't book it. And then it's just an interesting, flight configurations can be kind of funny sometimes. And also, like we said, there's seats that don't recline, especially the ones right in front of exit rows. And there's seats that can be located really close to a bathroom. So when I was flying to Brussels from last summer from Atlanta, which is like a pretty big shuttle over the Atlantic, I was put into an exit row, and I was super excited about it. Like, exit row, window, okay, I'm going to sleep. This is going to be awesome. I get on the plane, and I am right next to the bathroom. And not only is that loud, but it's also bright because they have the light on over there, the whole flight. even though it was a red eye. So just using a tool like Seat Guru to really understand the pros and cons of each seat on each type of jet can really save you.
Yeah. So Gallivanting Gals is saying that if anybody's interested, Iceland Air's business class is really just premium economy, but it's about the same price as premium economy, so that's not a bad choice either. So that's good to know.
Also, I just want to say Tracy is vertically challenged as well. Oh, good. Team.
She's 5 foot on a good day.
Yeah.
Nice. That's like my mom's not 5 foot on a good day.
There's pros and cons to being short for air travel. Obviously, I can sit a little bit more comfortably in economy, but I can't lift my suitcase into without standing on the seat sometimes into an overhead bin. So I usually have very kind people offer to help me out.
Gentlemen.
But yeah, there's certainly pros and cons to being short.
So to travel and tour are saying that you're correct. The Dutch are tall, generally speaking, and maybe that's why he's much more comfortable on KLM's economy class because that is the Dutch airline.
That actually wouldn't surprise me that they would have it be a little bit more roomy because their clientele is slightly taller. Although Americans are pretty tall too, on average, I think.
Yeah. Malcolm is saying that upgrades are the best way to use points in his opinion. I agree. I think those are a great way to do it. Gallivanting Gals only wants to do cruises on a river, so they want to do river cruises. I agree. I really want to do a river cruise as well.
You want to do a river cruise and an Alaskan cruise.
I mean, I don't have to do an Alaskan cruise. I just heard it's a cool way to do Alaska. But river cruise would be awesome. I'm all for that.
We'll see. That might actually be the first cruising experience that I end up going on, since it's always been Derek's top choice.
Germany travel personal. So Darian's saying the cruises are fun and he eats a lot as well. So that is the thing. Is like when I did my cruise in college, we went and we were like working out in the gym, and it was literally like me and my fraternity brothers were the only people in the gym, and the like instructors or whatever who are like manning the gym were like, yeah, like nobody uses the gym. They're like, on average, they were saying like the average person on a cruise gains like 30 pounds.
I thought you were I thought you were about to say, because his fraternity brothers could eat. I thought you were going to say that you guys were like eating nonstop.
Well, no. Well, yes, but also we were trying to go to the gym as well.
Look swole for the ladies.
Hey, you were my only lady.
They better
you were not on the cruise. You're my only lady. But yeah, no, I mean, we went to the gym, and basically what we were told was like, people don't use the workout facilities that often and gain like 15 to 30 pounds like on a cruise, which is crazy. But having been on one, I can see it definitely, like where at like 2 a.m. you've been drinking, you walk by like a pizza buffet and you're like, yeah, I'll have a slice. Why not? So it's definitely tough.
I just want to jump real quick and say your mom has chimed in and said that she's 4'11" and a quarter. Yay!
Nice.
That's true. Accurate.
Malcolm is saying that he doesn't like boats, so he's never done a cruise. And not being able to swim might have something to do with that. Yeah, that would. I mean, if you fall off a cruise ship, I think it doesn't matter if you can swim or not. But yeah, no, I can see that. Mark, yep, love that. So To Travel and Tour loves cruises. One of the biggest benefits is that you get to see so many different places all on the same vacation.
And just so you guys know, they are like cruise experts. They have been doing several live streams about cruises and cruising that you guys can tune into. And they have a way that they've, you can replay the ones that they've already done, and they've come out with some videos about cruising. So if you're interested in cruising and want to hear somebody talk about it who knows a little bit more than we do, their channel has a lot of good resources.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that also I might enjoy cruises more now, even not staying in a room with like 3 other hooligans who are messy as hell. So I think that just being with her
fraternity
in
brothers,
a stateroom with a balcony would be probably a
fraternity
magical
brothers,
way to
I guess, are synonymous with hooligans.
Yeah. Gallivanting Gals, we've done 3 cruises, but I, like you, don't have enough time to really explore the cultures. That is the one thing, right, is that it doesn't give you a ton of time to explore each city and each place. So, you take that with a grain of salt. But if you want to kind of like taste a bunch of different things kind of thing, it's a good option. So, that's why I have to keep doing them. See more.
Oh, hey, Ronnie. Thank you so much for joining. Sorry that we just saw your hello. So welcome.
Hi, Ronnie. Welcome.
We're chatting about accommodations and how to book them. We're chatting about cruising. You know what I still haven't talked about yet is Airbnbs. So I suppose that in the last half hour.
Mark Finlay is saying that row 13 on an Airbus A330 doesn't have a window, which is not cool, given that's a Comfort Plus seat. That would suck. I would be so upset.
Yeah, and that's the same with the 10A that you're talking about. It's like a premium economy or whatever.
Yeah. Gallivanting Gals, I've put some of the bags up in planes, but trains in Europe are sometimes issues with both of us, but usually we find a kind, taller person to help us. That's good.
Yeah.
I find that, I mean, I'm not that tall, but like, I have issues sometimes where I'm like, just toss it, Hope it doesn't come flying back down at me.
Also, so for the first time last summer, I did the lockers in a train station in Paris. That I was at the Gare du Nord doing that, and they have them in a lot of the train stations there. But you would check your luggage into a locker, and sometimes the lockers are high up.
Yep.
I was able to grab one that was like on the ground, so I didn't have to lift my stuff up. But that's another place where you have to really lift weights or something, especially if you're short before doing. Yeah,
so just touching on that as well, using like those lockers and stuff inside train stations or airports and whatnot, if you only have say you have like a long layover somewhere, it can be a really cool way to put your stuff out of the way, take your day pack out, and kind of see the city that you're maybe laying over in. I did that last year in Tokyo. So I flew into Narita, which is one of the main airports in Tokyo, but it's kind of far out. And my next flight was going to be through Haneda, which is one of the other Tokyo airports.
It's like Haneda's one that's closer to the city.
It's just south of Tokyo, so it's like really, really close. And so in order to get from one place to the other, you actually have to go through Tokyo. And I was like, well, if I'm going through Tokyo and I've got like an 8-hour layover, I'm not going to go hang out at the airport for 8 hours. So what I ended up doing was took my bags, went into Tokyo Central Station or whatever, checked them into one of those like locker things, had my little receipt. I'm like, I don't really know how this all works, but whatever, and went out and explored Tokyo for a few hours, which was a cool way of doing it, and highly recommend it. Now we need to go back because it's we need to really explore Tokyo. But
indeed. I just want to say bye, Gallivanting Gals. Thank you so much for joining again. Your contributions have been awesome today, so really appreciate all the chats, and good luck with OBS. Let me know if we're looking forward to joining your live chat tomorrow night.
Yeah, so if anybody wants, go check out.
No, don't be sorry about the comments. We loved it.
Yeah, no, the comments are great. So anybody who's curious, so Gallivanting Gals, I think, are doing their first live chat tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Time.
Yeah.
If I remember that correctly. And
8
so
Eastern.
8 Eastern. So we'll probably be checking that out tomorrow and giving some support. It'll be fun.
Yeah. We can all hang out again.
So my mama's saying that her and dad want to go cruise to Hawaii and Alaska.
Yeah, do it. No, not right now.
Not right now, but yeah, that sounds cool.
I wonder, I guess I haven't looked into Hawaiian cruises.
Sorry, Malcolm Hogan, 4 a.m. in New Zealand. Dear Lord.
Yeah.
That's quite the time.
And then Brenna's saying, I've always been curious about river cruises. I've also heard about a cruise where you bike between places during the day and then you use the boat to sleep at night. That's cool. I've heard about that in France as more of like a barge cruise where you are going down like the Seine or the Dordogne or something like that. Or it was a Rhone cruise, a Rhone barge tour.
I think it was the Rhone. Rick Steves has an episode on that.
And I think maybe Samantha Brown might too. But regardless, it's pretty cool that you can like basically follow, because of the barge river things that can be so slow moving, that you can kind of keep up with your boat when you can bike along the way. And especially if you're drinking a lot of wine and eating a lot of cheese, maybe that exercise might be a little bit needed. And then, all right, so what I wanted to do, I just want to also talk about Airbnbs real quick, which I don't think we've really touched on enough as compared to what I had prepared. So, like I was saying before, I've stayed at like an Airbnb or VRBO type house stay or apartment stay in a lot of different scenarios. And the most important thing when considering if you're trying to debate between a hotel or an Airbnb is what type of trip you are taking. And so there's certain times where an Airbnb might be more affordable and other times not. So for instance, when Derek and I went to Amsterdam last month, we were looking at a lot of last minute because we were flying. We were decided to go there kind of last minute. We were looking at hotels online and Airbnbs online. And specifically, because we were going to be there for several days, I was open to an Airbnb type experience. However, the amount of Airbnbs that either were still available or kind of fit what we needed were very, very small, actually like zero. Yeah. And so because we were a couple, we didn't need a lot of rooms, for example. So we were kind of narrowing it down to a 1-bedroom or a studio. And we wanted a kitchen specifically. And this is something that's really important to like look at the photos for of the actual accommodations kitchen. Specifically, we wanted at least one burner, so that way we could make eggs in the morning. For me, it doesn't make sense. And I don't actually know why Airbnbs exist that don't have a burner for cooking, but still have a kitchenette. But for me, that's really where the benefit is having a burner for cooking eggs or making pasta at home or something like that in the evenings. If it doesn't have that, then I can use the tea kettle in a hotel room to make instant oatmeal or something like that. Like, I don't need to have an Airbnb kitchen in order to make oatmeal. So there was just kind of like that trade-off of, does this make sense? And for some reason in Amsterdam, a lot of the kitchens did not have those burners. That being said, there's other destinations where Airbnbs have a full kitchen. I think a lot of those are in more of like the smaller cities and rural areas. Places like London, I had a hard time again last fall when I stayed at an Airbnb finding somewhere that had kind of like that full kitchen opportunity. And then when I got there, the pots and pans were kind of made for, what was interesting about it, and I talked about it in my Instagram story, the pots and pans were tiny. Like, I think they had purchased them at IKEA. They were tiny, but it was a 6-person, like, it was an Airbnb that could have housed 6 people. I was just one person. So that's one thing that I wrote actually on the review as a helpful tip for people traveling is, the pot that was supplied could not feed a family. I don't know how you could cook in the like pots and pans for an entire giant family. So it's just something that you really have to read the reviews very carefully for.
Yeah, and you also need to know if you're not going to be eating, if you know yourself, right, and you know that you want to probably eat at restaurants and things like that, and that's what you want to get out of your experience, an Airbnb, in order to have access to a kitchen, might not be that valuable to you.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to use it to actually save money, then you might actually end up spending more, unless you have a big group that you can kind of divide the cost between. So like, to me, like, that's really the time when Airbnbs make a lot of sense, is if it's maybe multiple couples going on a trip together, and you guys want to get a nice Airbnb that is going to be less expensive than getting 2 hotel rooms.
Yep.
That can be a great way to, or if there's a third couple, you get 3. That can be a great way to save a lot of money.
Because cooking while you're on your trip saves a ton of money, but also if you're in a foreign country, going to a grocery store is one of my favorite things to do, because you actually get to see what living like a local is like when you're there.
Yeah, but there's other ways. If it's just you by yourself, maybe a hostel would give you a similar experience to a VRBO, but a lot more economically. Whereas if there's 4 people, because you pay per bed, if there's 4 people and you would only need 2 rooms in an Airbnb, but you need 4 beds in a hostel, suddenly, it might actually be cheaper to get a VRBO or an Airbnb than it is to even stay in a hostel. So there's just different things like that you need to look at and see what makes sense for you, your group, and what kind of travel you like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And you also have to be worried, there's other things around check-in times that there's usually not a lot of.
There's very little flexibility with,
yeah.
Especially if, for example, you're going from the U.S. to Europe. Almost always you're probably going to be taking a red eye across the pond and landing pretty early in the morning in Europe. With an Airbnb, what I find is that it's really hard because there's this buffer of time, hours sometimes, between when you land at say 8 a.m. and a 3 p.m. check-in time, and you can't just go to an Airbnb and say, hey, I'm here early, I'm just going to leave my luggage. Yeah. So hey, I'm here early, can I check in now? That hotels are phenomenal at accommodating that. So that's one really important thing to consider, especially on day 1 of a trip, is when your flight lands and how much luggage you have versus when you can check in. Yeah. Because it becomes kind of a logistical element that when you're jet lagged, you might not want to have to think about.
So Malcolm was asking about what is VRBO. So VRBO is another site like Airbnb is called. It's vacation rental by owner, and it's very similar to Airbnb in terms of
it's actually older than Airbnb, and has a lot of it's just a different clientele though, I feel. It's a different business model. Like an Airbnb, you can find anything from sleeping on a couch or a spare bedroom or something, whereas vacation rental by owners, almost always in my experience, you get the whole place to yourself.
Yeah. So Brenna is saying that one thing to think about though with cooking is cook simply, and also remember that basics like olive oil and salt you'll probably have to go out and buy yourself. Yeah. So that
bring
is
with you.
Okay.
If you bring little things of salt and pepper with you because you're going to stay at an Airbnb, then you are winning.
Okay. You could do that. But that is one thing to think about, is that I do find that when we do things like, plan to cook and stuff, we do have a lot more food waste that way, because we end up buying something that we couldn't possibly eat all of, but we wanted pasta or something like that while we're there because it's cheap. But we still end up throwing half of it away because you can't eat it all in the few days that we're there. So
a special little tip that I have for cooking at an Airbnb is you can make if you have to buy produce for say a meal, let's say you're making an omelet that has mushrooms and peppers in it, then you can use mushrooms and peppers again to make a shrimp pasta with mushrooms and peppers or something in the evening. So there's ways to kind of meal plan even at an Airbnb where you're not doing a ton of food waste, but there's strategies that you have to consider a little bit when staying at a place for just a few days.
And then, it also depends on the type of place you're going to. Like, if we're going to a big city or something like that, like a London, Paris, etc., I don't want to cook a lot while we're there, because I want to go out and I want to explore, see things, sunset photography, all that kind of stuff. So I'd much rather just eat on the move, and so I'm less likely to say, let's get an Airbnb, because I know we're not going to eat it. If we were somewhere a little bit more rural, where having a kitchen so you can prepare your own snacks and lunches and things like that, because you're going to be out hiking all the time, that becomes a lot more of a valuable amenity to me. For instance, we when we were in Bariloche in Argentina, we stayed at a hotel, but it had a kitchen, and that was really good because we were going out on hikes, we were going to all these other, so we could like make things and take it with us, which was very, good for us.
Yeah, totally. Especially like just having sandwich supplies meat needs to be refrigerated, cheese needs to be refrigerated. If you're in a place that you're going to be hiking a lot, that can be paramount.
Yeah.
So
but for that you don't need a full kitchen as long as you have just like a fridge.
Yeah.
And some hotels are better than others with giving you actual room with to keep things cold, whereas others are like full of like mini fridge type items, and you can't really store anything. So that's important to know.
Vegas is like really important for that. Like, let's say you're going to Vegas and you're like, all right, I'm gonna go to Red Rock Canyon for the day or something like that. If you go buy your food, you're not going to have any space in that mini fridge.
Yeah. So Brenna is saying that depending on when you book a rental property, though, like if you start on a Thursday instead of a Friday, you might get lucky and be able to request early access. Yeah. And again, you can always ask. I mean, the worst that they can say is no. So you might as well ask to get early access, and if
I've found
they can't
that
make it
in
work,
the big major cities, if you're doing an Airbnb, like when I was in London. Even some of the, what's it called? The listings would say flat out, you are not going to have early access, like basically just don't ask. And that's because they have the digital locks. And the digital locks mean that like the owner doesn't even have to be on premise. They just kind of reset. And so they reset at a certain time and then they give you a new code. So it depends on how advanced the Airbnb environment is within the destination that you're going, because probably if you're going somewhere like pretty remote, they're not going to be doing that. You're going to be like renting from an actual host versus, in cities like London, the Airbnb system is it's an industry. There's companies that own 100 Airbnbs across the city, and so you don't even have any human-to-human interaction.
Yeah. So Karen Mack is saying that she did VRBO throughout Italy, and they used one of those locker storage services on their last day in Rome because they had to check out early, but their train to Florence wasn't until the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's another thing is find those types of services and know where they're at.
Yeah.
If they're at the train station that you're gonna be at anyways, maybe go drop them off and then still explore.
And I find that Europe is great about having those in train and bus stations, and I feel like the U.S. is, they'll have it probably at airports, but we don't have that type of travel infrastructure built out in the same way, which is unfortunate.
Well, most like train stations and stuff have like lockers and stuff in the U.S. so you can go like drop things off, and there's ways that you can do it. Airports less likely to have that. But you can find it. It's just harder.
Yeah. And then Travel and Tour saying making good of leftovers. I like that philosophy. Totally. And I think I go to the grocery store in a foreign country and I'm like, okay, I want to buy, I want to buy stuff, everything that I'm actually going to eat. I don't want to throw out stuff. And that's one thing too, that like, if I'm by myself, I want to buy a bottle of wine, but like, am I going to drink the whole bottle during my stay or not? So it's something that, Derek would. He just would be like, whatever, by myself. I'm gonna take it. Just kidding. But it's like, okay. Oh, it'd be great to have a bottle of wine with my pasta, but I'm only gonna be here 3 nights. Am I going to finish it?
Yeah.
Derek's like, that's a foreign concept to me. I don't understand.
Just buy a 6-pack of beer.
That's true. I don't drink beer.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's everything that we're talking about today, though, around like different kinds of accommodations, is you just need to know, what kind of traveler you are, what it is you're looking to do, and get out of your experience. Because we would go and do, any of these as potential options. And a good way to get out and explore the world and meet new people and whatnot. And I'd say, if you're looking for, meeting people and stuff, hostels are a great way to do that. If you're looking for, space with a bunch of people that are, are all going on the same trip, a vacation rental like a VRBO or an Airbnb is a great way to do that. If you're looking for just like, I just want to go and have a bed, that's it. I want to know that my stuff's secure, get a hotel room, it's cheap, that's a great way to do that. There's just a lot of different ways to go out, explore, and travel.
Yeah, and 2 new comments just came in that I want to read out because I think they're both really great. So Malcolm says, we buy enough food for half of our stay and then stretch it out, which is so smart, just trying to be creative. And that's actually a philosophy that Derek and I have kind of been trying to use just in quarantine too. Like daily life now, is trying to just figure out what new things we can concoct with what's in the fridge already, so we don't have to go to the grocery store a lot, we don't have to spend more money. So I think that's really smart, and especially like if you, for example, you're there for a while, maybe you'll go out to eat once or twice. If you have leftovers from that experience too, you can bring it home and be like, all right, what can I mix into these leftovers from my, pantry that I have created and make something new too. Yeah. And then To Travel and Tour said, the thing with doing groceries in a foreign country is that many people only see what they don't have. Instead, they would do well to look at what they do have and then go from there. Completely agree. One thing...
If you're in Australia, you're like, where's my peanut butter? Well, they don't have peanut butter.
Yeah. Or when I studied abroad in London, they don't have Kraft macaroni and cheese. What am I going to do? No, I got over that very quickly. And my mom totally shipped me Kraft Mac from the States. But I think it's something that people get so used to, especially the brands of food, that are going to be completely different when they go to a new grocery store. And I love, like I was saying before, I love going grocery shopping in new places because it is a completely new experience, and you're seeing all these different brands, you're seeing how they package things differently. Like eggs, for example, in the US are always refrigerated, but in Europe they're not, that sort of thing.
Same thing with milk, and it has to do with how they're processed, right? Like eggs in Europe or wherever, they're not processed the same way, so they actually stay good, shelf stable, for quite a while. Same thing with milk. They use UHT or something like that milk, which is how it's processed at super high temperatures, I think, and that's shelf stable. So you're not buying that in the refrigerated section. You're buying that from the, just buy the cereal or something. So.
Or even the differences of how maybe in a foreign country compared to the US, you can usually just go up to a shelf and there's kind of pre-cuts of meat already wrapped in plastic for you, and you can just take it away. Or in a foreign country, you might be needing to go up to a person and ask them to make that meat for you to take away, and you kind of have that deep dive into being a local just from that experience,
which it can be nerve-wracking if you don't know the language. That can be very tough.
That's when having a phone and just pulling up a photo and be like, I want that. That can be helpful.
Google Translate, etc. It's very important. Same thing with pharmacies. Pharmacies abroad can be a little bit different, because pharmacies do a lot more in Europe than a typical pharmacy here in the United States does a lot of times. So for a lot of common ailments, you'll go there instead of a doctor. And they'll really help you try to find the right stuff, but you have to be able to communicate, so make sure that you have some sort of translation app if you don't already speak the language.
Yes. And totally. So I'm assuming Niels and Kimberly are saying that's exactly what I would do when I was living in Germany. Just go over to the meat counter and ask for thin cut schnitzels.
Nice.
And that's I would never know the translation for thin cut schnitzels, even if I was probably fluent in German. So just being able to communicate that's the specificity that you need in a grocery store can be a challenge if you're in a foreign country. So I think it's always an adventure just to go grocery shopping.
Karen Mack likes to buy toothpaste in every country. She collects toothpaste. That's fun. Because the brands are different and it's fun to use it when you return home.
That's
fun.
such a fun thing to do. I've never thought about doing that. And I've actually never really been that adventurous about toothpaste in foreign countries in general.
Yeah.
I think I've only bought it when I was studying abroad because I was there, so long. But we brought, like when we were in South America for 3.5 weeks, we brought our own toothpaste that lasted the whole time. So we haven't really branched out from American brands that much.
Yeah. Malcolm is saying that language difficulties are part of the reason to travel. I mean, it definitely stretches you, and it makes you gives you some grit and flexibility and stuff like that.
I don't know how many people were on the chat where I told this story, but I'm just going to tell it again because it's like my favorite, most embarrassing language story. So when I was by myself in France last summer, I went to a sushi restaurant, which was really great. And I don't speak French. As I mentioned, I'm trying to learn a little bit of it on Duolingo right now during quarantine, but I don't speak French. And the wait staff spoke French and Japanese, but no English. And so I had a fantastic meal. I was able to get through the whole meal process pretty easily, and then I asked for the bill. Which you typically need to do in France when you're done, or else they'll just kind of leave you sitting there for a while. And I learned that asking for the bill, I had learned that phrase in French. So I think because I kind of had navigated my way through the whole ordering process in mostly French, they thought that I knew enough French. So I said, yeah, l'édition s'il vous plaît, and then they spoke back to me in French. And I had no idea what they said. And I thought it was okay, sure, we'll be right back with the check. That was the context clue that I thought I was getting. And so I just said, oui, oui, merci. And I waited another 10 minutes, flagged down the waitress again, said the exact same thing, l'édition s'il vous plaît. She said the exact same thing back. And it was the same exchange. Then another 10 minutes goes by, and I think the people next to me started looking at me really funny too, because I remember them being what's going on here? And I smiled at them thinking oh, they keep forgetting about me, what the heck. Little did I know, they kept telling me, you have to go pay in the back. And finally, I saw another table get up and go pay in the back, and I realized the entire time she was just telling me, oh, no, I'm not, we don't bring you the bill, you have to pay in the back. So, I was embarrassed because I thought that I was being, ignored by service. And the entire time it was just a complete language barrier issue. But I just had to laugh it off. I probably blushed a little bit and then went and paid my bill. And I actually ended up going back to that restaurant because it was such a memorable, it was delicious food, but it was such a memorable experience, and I just wanted to kind of redeem myself for my own benefit when I went to France last fall. So there's that. I think, everybody's subject to experience something like that. You just kind of got to laugh it off, and it becomes a story.
Yeah. So Ronnie is saying that hopefully Italy will be opening for travel by next February because they're hoping to do an 8-day tour in Italy. Well, I hope for your sake I hope for everybody's sake it's open by February. Italy's a great place. We love Italy. We've been there a few times now.
And Italy's economy is so dependent on tourism that I hope for Italy's sake they're open by February too.
And, happy that you're going there because, they'll need all the help they can get kind of coming out of this. So
yeah, that'll be a great trip, by the way.
Italy's a cool place. Yeah. I mean, we've never gone south of Rome. So we've done Florence, Siena, Rome. We've done Turin. We've done Milan.
The Piedmont region, Como.
A lot of the Piedmont region, and then also Como.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done a lot of that northern kind of area and stuff. But yeah, we need to get back because we need to hit Naples and Sicily and all that stuff. There's so much to do and see there.
Yeah. Brenna's saying, even close to home too, if you explore a grocery store outside of your comfort zone, like an Asian market or a Mexican market, you can find some interesting ingredients. And that, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I went, there's an Asian market near where I grew up that I went with one of my Chinese American friends when I was in high school. And I distinctly remember that was my first time going to a non-Americanized, supermarket. And it's super cool to just see what ingredients they need for their food, look at all the bubble teas, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd say that, go to like a carniceria, like a Mexican like meat market kind of thing, and you can find some like really cool stuff there, different types of meats and whatnot. But then also a lot of them will also sell like tamales and like all this other stuff fresh, and delicious chicharrones, which are kind of like pork rinds kind of thing, but they usually have a little bit of meat still on them. It's if you can get that stuff fresh, it's like super tasty.
Okay, I just read Malcolm's comment, and I'm not sure if I'm following exactly what happened, but I've been asked to stop speaking Danish in Denmark. I don't speak Danish. It was my New Zealand accent that made it hard. So I don't know if they thought you were trying to speak Danish there, and just weren't used to your particular accent or what. That's really funny. And then To Travel and Tour says, the French value politeness. Saw a picture of a sign somewhere once. Prices were different. Un café, which is one coffee, €3. Un café s'il vous plaît is €2. Bonjour, un café s'il vous plaît is €1. Oh, that's so cute. So yeah, they were certainly looking for people to take a step back and just be kind to the staff. That's wonderful.
That's pretty cool. Germany travel guy. So great interview with Clarissa a few days ago. Very interesting.
I was hoping Clarissa was going to join today, but she's been pretty busy.
Yeah. So for those who haven't seen, so Eliz has done a number of these interviews with people who are having different experiences through quarantine and whatnot. And the last one was with a friend of ours, Clarissa, who was living down in Buenos Aires as an expat for her job. And when Argentina closed their border,
they closed it immediately.
They closed it immediately.
They said, end of day today, no more flights to the U.S.
Yeah. So she ended up, using that as a decision to come back to the U.S. She couldn't get back before the borders closed. They closed, but she was still able to, cross the border into like Brazil and come back. She made it back and everything, spoiler alert, but it was a pretty interesting interview. If you want to go check it out, it's pretty cool.
Escape.
A lot of great insights into the what's going on down there and how different countries are reacting to things and whatnot. So there's one on that. There's one with Graham in the UK.
Yeah. Bye, Brenna. By the way, thank you so much for joining.
Bye, Brenna.
But yeah, there's one about what daily life is like right now during the COVID-19 outbreak in England, specifically, not London. It's in like the middle part of England. And then one in New York City with my friend Megan, who is actually, living in the epicenter of basically the outbreak in the U.S., in my opinion. And then there's one with my friend Rachel, in Seattle. And Seattle was the first city in the U.S. to really have an outbreak. So they have been kind of a few weeks ahead of a lot of other places in the U.S. in terms of their precautionary measures. We're here in Chicago, just so everybody knows, which is in the middle of the U.S. And Chicago is the third largest city in America. But we thankfully, at this point in time, we certainly have a lot of cases here, but it hasn't been nearly as bad as New York City. Yeah. But I hope everybody on this chat is, staying home, staying safe, daydreaming about travel once again.
Day drinking. I thought that's what you were about to say.
No. Well, you guys can.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
We give you permission if that's, what you need. But
yeah.
But yeah, I think we've been really, I really enjoyed being able to connect with my friends in those places, and learn about how things are different in different spots, because when we're stuck here just in our house, we know what our daily life is like, and we hear about stuff on the news, but having that firsthand account was really cool just across the board. So thank you, Darian, from Germany Travel Personal Guide, for watching the interview with Clarissa learning about what Argentina's like. And I actually really enjoyed learning because at the end of that interview, I just started asking her what just living in Argentina was like as an expat too. Learning about that culture.
Yeah. So to travel and tour, they just extended our leave from work yet again, not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Malcolm has said that they've been on lockdown now for 3 weeks and hopefully only one more week to go. So yeah, I think we still have a couple of weeks left into the official term of quarantine here in or lockdown here in Chicago. But I mean, I think as a betting man, or if I was a betting man, I'd say that we're probably gonna extend it, through the rest of May as well. But,
yeah. And Ronnie Dove is saying most of my bloodline is from Italy, so also I would like to go to the Calabria region while you're there as well. That is such a great point that we always recommend traveling places that you have heritage in, especially as one of your first trips abroad, for example. We have found such rewarding experiences from doing that ourselves. Derek, of course, is kind of like his heritage is a lot of places, so we still have a lot to cover for his map. But my heritage is mostly Northwestern European. We've gone to a lot of those destinations now. I think Sweden is the only other one that we need to hit for me. But it just makes it feel so much more real that like your ancestors are from a place when you can really understand what the culture is like there. So you have some Italian heritage as well.
Yeah, like in
Naples.
the Naples region.
And like we said, we haven't been south of Rome, so I guess we could go back to Italy too and explore that for Derek.
Whereas Calabria is like the toe of the boot, so down in the south part. So there's parts of Italy that I'd like to go to for family reasons. Poland, Mexico, kind of all over the place. So
yeah. Okay, you already said that one.
It's the To Travel and Tour. So they've never been to New Zealand yet. And if so, if you were to recommend one thing to do there, what would it be?
So I think that would be towards Malcolm, and he says the South Island has better scenery. Antarctic Center in Christchurch is also very good. I've heard wonderful things about Christchurch.
Yeah.
Really, New Zealand is like a hot destination right now, at least in terms of travel talk in America. So I don't know if that's really exciting for you to hear or not, but there's been a lot of coverage in the travel industry news, like magazines and press here about New Zealand. There's been a lot of new flights that like long haul flights opening up from the U.S. to New Zealand, the U.S. to Australia. So that part of the world is becoming kind of like much more accessible too. I think we were certainly looking into going that direction this year. I don't know if it's going to happen now, given how much time we have to like take off in order to fully enjoy New Zealand, and the fact that we're a little bit behind on what we can do in 2020 at this point. But 2021, we're probably going to see you there, so.
Yeah. And Malcolm's saying that he's in Christchurch. Very cool.
Nice.
I know that Christchurch has had its issues over the last few years, just around
that terrorism attack.
The domestic terrorism attack, and then also I think there's an earthquake in Christchurch or something like that a few years ago. That destroyed a bunch of stuff.
Back to what he was saying about the South Island. I mean, that area I hear is just so scenic and great for people who love nature. So we particularly are the kind that really like to get out into rural areas on trips, and I think that we would want to go everywhere on the South Island and do all the things. So it would be so cool someday to get there in the next couple years.
And I think actually you guys just had an earthquake yesterday, Malcolm. So hopefully you guys are doing okay with that. I don't think it was like a giant one, but
my friend Rachel in Salt Lake City, she was on at the beginning of this chat. They had an earthquake in Salt Lake City like a month ago now, while like right at the beginning of everybody's quarantine, and they've had over 1,000 aftershocks since then. And Salt Lake City doesn't really get earthquakes that often, so it's been a little bit tricky for people who are all stuck at home. That's for sure. So I wouldn't wish any sort of natural disaster on anyone at this point in time.
Well, I would never wish it on
Ever.
anybody at any point in time.
Exactly. Malcolm saying, yeah, the center and East City wiped out by earthquake 3.6 yesterday. Ugh. That's really tough. To Travel and Tour says, I'm a very outdoorsy person. I love to go places with great nature and scenery. We are outdoorsy as well, but we...
Ish.
Yeah, like we and certainly Derek is a huge landscape photographer. Shameless plug to follow him on Instagram for those types of things. But we both really enjoy stunning natural scenery. We probably aren't like the kind of people that are going to go scale like the side of a mountain or be huge like.
In fact, we're definitely not the people that are going to scale a mountain. But
yeah, confirmed. But
we'll hike a mountain.
Yeah, we'll hike around on a mountain. We won't climb an entire 14,000 foot thing. We're probably not going to go climb Everest or anything like that. But yeah, I think we agree with you there. That I mean, when we went to Wales, it was like one of our most favorite trips because it was so outdoorsy in Snowdonia National Park and stuff like that.
Yeah. You get to that's the kind of mountain we will do is like Mount Snowdon where you can like walk up the mountain. Yeah. That's more our speed. We're not.
It's easier to pack that way too. Like if you're actually doing really intense outdoorsy things, it's hard to pack in just a carry-on. And you guys know me, I'm a carry-on girl.
Yeah. To Travel and Tour saying that sounds like the same level as outdoorsy as me.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we're more like. I want to go hike, but then I want to have like a nice bed to go back to. I don't want to like sleep in the tent. I want to like sleep in a nice bed. So
that's your own tent.
That's where I am.
Although Derek really wants to do the Camino de Santiago.
I do want to do that, but you stay in a bed at hostels.
Yes. So instead of like doing the Appalachian Trail, for example, which you don't have hostels to stay at every night,
or the Pacific Crest Trail.
Like Derek is really interested in doing the Camino de Santiago because you can. At least have a bunk bed waiting for you.
It might not be the most comfortable bed, but after tons of walking, who cares?
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like we're kind of wrapping up. We've actually been going for over 2 hours now.
2 hours and 11 minutes.
Thanks to everybody for sticking with us. It's been a really great chat today. I think, we all got really amped about talking about accommodations, and there's still so much more to talk about with that, but I loved hearing everybody's tips and experiences, and hopefully we'll start to brainstorm a couple more themes that we can carry through on future live chats as well. So if anybody has any cool ideas that you'd love for us to talk about in future live streams, feel free to DM them. About a week ago we did one that was really focused on road trips, and so it's just fun to be able to really come together and have a group think on these hot topics. So like we were saying, we do these live streams twice a week, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Central and Sunday mornings at 11. During quarantine, our quarantine is likely going to be extending into May, so I don't know about everybody else's, but we are definitely happy to have you all join for all of them coming up. So tune back in and feel free to subscribe to my channel by pressing that red subscribe button for future videos too. I've been putting out other videos besides the live streams during this time too. We talk about travel, meaningful travel, and the means to get there. And I'd love to have as many people join this wonderful community as we can. All right, well, thank you, everybody, and hope you have a great rest of your weekend, or if you're in New Zealand, a great Monday. And we'll talk to you all soon, and see you on Thursday. Cheers. Cheers. Bye. Here.